Is the best of breed revenue stack under attack? Today, revenue teams can vibe code applications built for today's AI and data-centric environments, while broader platforms offer fewer integration challenges. On this episode of Conversations with MarTech, we're talking to Naaman Khan, CMO of Reevo, about stacks, challenger brands, and more. Welcome to Conversations with MarTech. This episode of Conversations with MarTech is brought to you by SEMrush. Meet your unfair advantage. A new SEMrush uniting search and AI discovery into one powerful marketing growth engine, delivering richer data, more keywords, deeper AI insights, and prioritized next steps. With SEMrush, you can turn total brand visibility into coordinated action. Get a 14-day free trial and discount code. Visit martech.org/SEMrush-coupon or scan the QR code.
Well, hi there. Thanks for the intro, Mike. So I'm Naaman. I'm an accountant from Canada who got into marketing many years ago and has been focused on B2B marketing for all of that time. I'd say my current obsession is with simplifying this concept of a revenue operating system and helping people understand how AI can really help them to achieve their goals. Obsession I have had for many years is just a little bit of activity in tennis, and so I try to improve my tennis game in between messaging channels and all kinds of fun marketing topics.
All right, so you mentioned stacks, basically, right? Whether it's a MarTech stack or a sales tech stack, are stacks that we know them in trouble because you got people who are vibe coding, looking at these applications that cost them money and licenses and say, I can build that because I'm a vibe coder. You've got platforms like yours that consolidate a whole bunch of functions that used to be, and in some cases still are for some companies, a bunch of point solutions, right? And then, in general, we're seeing kind of a move away, it feels like, from those best of breed applications towards these like fuller, more featured platforms. Is that what you see?
No question. Certainly from our vantage point, what we see is over the past decade or so, there's really been this focus on building out a best of breed revenue stack. And that meant having your CRM and then building all of the components that you wanted around it and being quite proud of that. I think the offset of that approach has just been this integration tax. And so you have sometimes very large, sophisticated RevOps teams who are spending more than 50% of their time not really working on strategic initiatives to move the business forward, but working on integrations, fixing brittle APIs. In previous roles that I've had, we would routinely have leads that just somehow slipped through the cracks between HubSpot and Salesforce. And it happened continually. And, we would look into why. I would always hear about brittle APIs or silent something or other failing. That's a significant tax that you pay when you move to best of breed. And so I certainly think that from our vantage point, a lot of our customers don't want to pay that integration tax. They also don't want to have their sales teams working in 20 tabs just to prep for a meeting. And I think the has really changed it has been the fact that you can't really leverage the power of AI when you have these sophisticated yet brittle stacks. The data that you need with the context that you need has to be in a unified place. It can't be waiting for things to update. It can't be, well, I have partially the data, but the 3 or 4 elements of metadata from my dialer didn't really connect to some other thing. That doesn't work. And so I think what people are seeing is that, hey, like, in addition to the integration tax, AI just isn't as powerful when you don't have something like Reevo. And so certainly from our vantage point, like, we see those 2 reasons driving a lot of interest with customers.
Yeah, data has become so important. There's I guess it's old now, the data is the new oil. But, if your engine's leaking oil, you're gonna have a problem, right? So like you said, the data's got to flow from app to app in a stack, and anything that you lose that leaks potentially you lose value.
Yeah, 100%. It's also not the core competency of your company. Like, if you are in the business of manufacturing doors, then you should probably focus on that as opposed to building like this massive like operations infrastructure so you can sell your product. And I think that also, I wanted to touch on the vibe coding point. Like, I think I certainly have a point of view. And I think the vibe coding has certainly made the build versus buy topic, which has been around for many years, a little easier. It's much easier to build, 100%. I think when it comes to like a revenue stack, we aren't really seeing that in any material way. I think like the security and compliance issues, if you have to handle SOC 2 and GDPR and all the rest, and the maintenance of that, the technical debt of that. People who build that, if they ever leave your company, they're walking away with knowledge of something that was vibe coded. And I think for me, it's really less about can you do it? It's more, is this the business that you want to be in? And is it more advantageous to have a company who focuses on this on 100% time and has all of the software development policies and securities that you would want to handle that problem for you? So yeah, I think it's still early days for that stuff. I think it has a lot of promise, but I don't see it replacing things like a revenue system.
Yeah, all good points and things that IT leadership, developer team leaders would point out, right? That the security, the institutional knowledge, that there's a bunch of stuff. I mean, you see people on LinkedIn, I built this app to replace it with vibe coding, but is it a production ready, enterprise ready platform? Probably not. So
yeah, and are you going to accommodate like the 30 things your users are going to want every couple of weeks, and who's going to handle that? And like, it's just, if that's your core competency, like the fact that it's easier to build, I don't really know whether it changes like the fundamental question.
Yeah. You've worked for Salesforce and Dropbox, both of which are big names in their spaces. And now you're at Reevo, which we might consider to be like a challenger brand. How does that impact the way that you think about your team's work in marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So being a challenger brand for a marketer is a ton of fun and exciting, actually. You're at, like Salesforce, getting a meeting is a little different than getting a meeting when you're at a challenger brand and no one knows you. It just puts more and more emphasis on really great marketing, and I think that actually is a ton of fun. When I think about how the challenger position affects marketing, there are probably a few things that come to mind. The first one is that as a challenger brand, is there a pain that you can uniquely solve for your customer? And I think it goes back to we call it a Frankenstack issue that, exists with our customers that are on these legacy platforms. So as a challenger brand, like you need to have something that you solve. And for us, like there's a very clear pain that we solve. The hours and hours that are spent on these Frankenstacks, the amount of data loss that happens, the inability to leverage AI, like these are really big problems. These are not like insignificant things. So as a challenger brand, just being very clear on the problem you solve is the first part. I think the second thing, and this is actually a really exciting one, is that when you're starting out like we are, you really don't have to do things that scale. Like you really have to focus on a pretty small, I call it a subculture of your audience, and just really, really happy. We're doing things like having community dinners now. We have a couple set up in New York and some on the East Coast and the West Coast, and we've had great response from revenue leaders who want to come and talk about like what they're doing to modernize their revenue system. Could we do that every day of the week for 10 years? Probably not. But at our scale, it's wonderful. Like we've gotten so much feedback. We're going to do multiple, community events now because the feedback has been so strong. So, picking these tactics that don't necessarily have to scale to like a production campaign is also, part of, I think, being a challenger brand.
You mentioned the dinners, the community dinners.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned like you don't need to scale. You don't need to be everywhere.
That's right.
There are so many channels available to marketers these days. What else is working in terms of marketing and messaging, and like where else do you think that your brand could be?
Well, we want it to be everywhere, but I think, as you said, like when you start, like you kind of have to take it one step at a time. I think in terms of channels, let's start with messaging. The all-in-one message has actually been resonating really, really well for us. So the customers that we have now, and we can't really keep up with the demand that we're seeing. People want to move off of these like very complex systems and move on to something that's much more unified. They also want to invest in a system that is, AI native. It's the term a lot that's used in the industry. So from a messaging perspective, that's really working. I think what you'll see us do is as our product roadmap becomes even stronger, and we're launching some amazing things in Q2. I think what you'll see us do is move even beyond the integration value prop and move much, much more into helping you do tasks autonomously. We already do that in the product, but as that gets even stronger, I think what you'll see is that messaging will now reflect, hey, like not only do we, provide this very clean all-in-one revenue platform, but we also will do probably 20 of the tasks out of your 25 that you need to do today. And you can control them from like a vantage point as a sales leader, like that autonomous sort of like management of a process or governance, I think is going to be another compelling message for us. In terms of channels that are working, we do a few things. So we invest quite a bit in content and community. So content with our AEO, SEO, and GEO, those are the new terms. And we focus on those. We're making like really good progress. We're starting to focus more on owned social, LinkedIn, X, that is a non-negotiable. You have to be present. Our community is all there. So we've just started investing in those and seeing some really good traction. Communities I mentioned, like online and offline communities, that's something we're focused on. And then we also have a group that focuses on like advocates. And so we have lots of other people in the industry who feel very strongly about this topic and advocate for what they see in Reevo. And then, of course, the stuff you might expect, like we do targeted email outreach, we do some like paid on media and so forth. But the ones that I think are really important to us are the organic ones, building the value-based communities, building the content that resonates with people, as opposed to sort of like focusing too much on paid.
Yeah. When you say people come to you and they're interested in an AI native platform, like what does that mean to them? What are they looking for? We talked to Ryan Warren from Razorfish for an episode, and we kind of touched on how people have sort of bolted AI onto applications. It's not the most elegant thing in a lot of cases, but what do they picture as AI native when they come to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there's like a universal definition yet of what AI native means. For me, I think it's two elements of what makes something AI native. The first thing is actually the architectural choices in the app. So like the architecture of our app, and I'm not a CTO, like when I spend time with our technical team, like it's amazing, like the stuff that they've done. I just don't quite follow all the technical topics that they cover, but using things like a vector database that can consume different types of the structured and semi-structured data. Like that's an architectural decision that unlocks the power of AI in a way that like a different type of database would not. The way that the different capabilities are like unified, like they're not integrated. It's just like one code base that, has all of the different capabilities all the way from dialing to prospecting, creating a TAM, like enriching, like all of that stuff is like one technical architecture. So that's a little hard to explain to people who don't have like engineering backgrounds, but AI native really starts from the ground up. Did you build it to be AI native? So there's an architectural component that's like, we should probably invest more, I think, in unpacking how we do that at Reevo, because it's actually pretty amazing. The second part I think about being AI native is the experience. And so when you think of revenue platforms, very rarely do you think you open it and there's a screen that looks like Reevo does. You can have a traditional screen with like a pipeline view, or you can just have a view that has a prompt that you can type into or you can talk to. You can say, Reevo, tell me, what are the 3 things I should focus on today to maximize my revenue potential? And Reevo will tell you. That's such a different, that is AI native to me.
Right.
It's like certainly the infrastructure is important. The user experience, then the way they interact with the system also has to be something that's much more 2026. None of this like all menus and pivoting filters and like creating reports. Like you should just tell it what you want. And then, as I mentioned, as we get into more like, agentic forward, you probably don't even need to ask it. You probably need to, when you open Reevo, it'll just tell you, hey, proactively, here's what you should be doing today. I've blocked these 3 calls for you and that sort of thing. So that experience is completely different. That is AI native. And as you said, I think it's when you have a legacy code base, legacy architecture, doing what I just said is like not really that easy. And bolting it on will feel like you bolted it on.
Yeah, it's increasingly the way that we interact with our software is just telling it what you need. And, we've come a long way since SQL strings and other things that we had to do to get reports way back when.
Yeah, it is a lot like what you would see in sci-fi movies. Like I remember when I was at Salesforce at Dreamforce, which is our big conference, we had this keynote event, and Mark Benioff came on. It was the year Siri came out, and he said, "Siri, where am I going to come in this week on my number?" And then Siri replied, and the audience just like loved it and went berserk. That was quite a number of years ago. That's beyond possible now. Like that's like super easy to do. But that just reflects how people want to interact with their tools. Like it should be much more like a very friendly consumer style, easy, like little to no onboarding type experience, as opposed to like, enterprise tools that require, onboarding and so on.
Yeah. Tell us about the start of your tenure as CMO. Did you have to take a lot of time to evaluate like the operations and the team? Did you have a good idea of what you wanted to get done in a short amount of time once you came on board? Like, what was your mindset going into the role?
I see. I think in terms of the mindset, there's one word that comes to mind, which is being a builder. And that's what we call ourselves here at Reevo. We're all builders. We don't really have titles or anything like that, which I think is like really, really wonderful. I think for me, it's a personal question, but I think for me, like the thing that's kept me interested in marketing is I consider it to be a craft, because like it's got such a diverse set of capabilities. Like somebody who works on brand identity will care about like the color gradient in an ad. And then marketing is also about, well, what is your LTV to CAC on this particular like channel? And then in the middle is like, what's the messaging that will be different from what everyone else is saying? Like that almost takes like three different types of people. So it's so diverse that, being able to treat it like a craft is really the part that excites me. And so that was my mindset going in, which is that the space of revenue platforms, CRM type, platforms, it's just ripe for someone to come and make it relevant, exciting, useful, progressive. It needs a space in like 2026. I think like there's really nothing that comes to mind when you think of these things as a vendor or like a company that's made this like relevant in 2026. So treating marketing like a craft is my mindset, not being too bogged down in all the mechanics of marketing, but really trying to connect at a human level, humanize it, make it relevant. I don't think anyone's done that. I think Salesforce was probably the company that did it last time, and the brand identity was this wonderful sort of like creatures of the national forest and humanizing it. But that was 20 years ago, right? So I think like in the age of AI, that needs a bit of a crank. So that's really the thing that I was focused on. But as I said, marketing is so diverse, right? So you kind of have to pick a spot.
All right. Naaman Khan, thanks for joining us on Conversations with MarTech.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.